Hey everybody, welcome to Local Business Hacks Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Case, and I'm on a mission to help you. Every week, we're going to be talking to local business owners and experts to get their best tips, tricks, and hacks to grow your business. This show is designed to teach you, inspire you, and motivate you to take massive action and start to build your future-proof business. Whether you're just starting off or you're taking your existing business to the next level, this episode is for you. So let's get started. Hey, local business hackers. I'm your host, Director of Global Business Dev at Referrizer, joined today by Brad Thorpe, CEO and founder of Isophit. Isophit is going to be a brand that you see everywhere, just like you see the spin bike that came out. You see Pelotons in people's houses. Isophit, I'm so excited. Brad, welcome to Local Business Hacks.
Oh, man, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited. I'm equally excited to grow this company and get it into the hands of absolutely everybody, because I believe, and the science will indicate, Isophit and isometric exercise can pretty much help everyone across the board. So very excited.
That's awesome. Well, we're excited to hear the story. Talk to us about what was definitely not an overnight success. And if you guys head to isophit.com, you'll see that Brad's organization is working with almost every major sports team and logo that I've ever seen, from the FBI to the Miami Heat. Talk to us about this feat to get to this point.
And it's just, at the end of the day, it's hard work, a never sort of say die attitude. And to be honest, being able to help a lot of people really fast, because what we do with Isophit, and more so isometric strength training, is we help humans perform at an optimal level. So we cover rehab all the way through to performance. And it doesn't matter if you're a 7-year-old or a 93-year-old. With isometric exercise, it is the foundation of all human movement. So if you're skipping it and you're not doing isometrics, you will experience joint pain, muscle weakness, poor mobility, diseases that you don't want, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, increases your likelihood of stroke, heart attacks, heart disease. All this stuff we can impact with isometric training, because, as I said, it's the foundation of human movement. And more so, it's the founding principles of how muscles work. You got to have an upregulation of isometric muscle tension before you move. But we forgot about that as an industry. And that's why people get hurt with exercise. And that's why people stop exercising, because they don't know where to start. So where we fill it in, we fill in that gap of sort of saying, hey, it all starts here. Nike sort of said, just do it. And well, what the hell is it? Well, it starts here at Isophit. So if you're out there, if you want to live a active lifestyle, pain-free, we're it.
That's awesome. Brad, talk to us about, outside of how people can get connected with you, what is your journey to get to this point in your career?
Man, it's been a wild one. So with my background, I was like the 21st person in the world with my dual designations. I studied under the pitchman for Bowflex, a guy named Tom Purvis. And then I studied under a guy named Greg Roskoff, who created this product or a method of exercise and manual assessment called muscle activation techniques. And if you're familiar with like the NFL and a guy named Peyton Manning, he left Indianapolis to go out to Denver Broncos after he had his neck injury, if you guys all recall. And that was to work with this guy, Greg, and a group of others, but Greg primarily. And Greg was the one that helped him restore the communication, stabilize his neck structure, and win 2 Super Bowls. Greg also worked with John Elway and also was thanked during John Stockton's Hall of Fame induction ceremony. So that's sort of the power of like this type of therapy, muscle activation techniques. So I was doing both of these programs. As I said, I was the 21st person in the world with my designations. Graduated both programs 2006. So, we're going back some time now. But I was struggling myself personally with hypertension. So high blood pressure. And as we know, high blood pressure increases your likelihood of both heart attacks and strokes, neither of which I want, and most people don't. So even with these 2 designations, I was not able to resolve my own blood pressure issues. And I was on a 13-year journey to figure this out, because I was diagnosed at the age of 19 with hypertension. My blood pressure was 150 over 100, and that was at 19. So by the time I turned 34 years of age, I heard about a study at McMaster University, which is a local university to the Toronto area. And what they stated was isometric-based exercise was as efficient as a single pharmaceutical agent for lowering blood pressure. Now, historically, in the world of physical therapy and exercise, they stated that if you had high blood pressure, don't do isometrics because it would elevate your blood pressure. And just to let people know what isometrics is, in case you're wondering, it's about learning how to contract a muscle without creating a change in joint position. So it's kind of like when you tense up, that would be a version of an isometric muscle contraction. Now, for me, I use a wall behind me originally as my original Isophit. So I'd be like pushing into an immovable object. So it would restrain movement. And I had two of my clients walk in one day, and this is a couple months down the road when it's like I've gone through my own little, let's see if it works for Brad type thing. And just to point out, my blood pressure was resolved in 2 weeks.
Wow.
After 14 years of struggling. And that was changing diet, doing cardio, losing weight, gaining weight, exercising more or less, drinking more. Nothing worked. 2 weeks after I sort of implemented a 20-minute per day isometric training protocol, resolved. I guess 15 years later, my blood pressure is still fine. But so I had these two guys walk in one day. One is a guy named Lewin Webb. He is a film producer. One of the more major ones he did was one with Brad Pitt when he's up in Tibet. I forget the 7 years in Tibet or something to that effect. And then my other guy, Alan, one of Canada's largest butchers. And both of them walked in and said, "Hey, Brad, there's no wall space at my gym." I'm like, "What do you mean there's no wall space at your gym? There's wall space everywhere." But yet not at gyms, actually, because they shove all the machines up against it, or it's covered in mirror, or there's a hallway. So it's pretty unique. So that was that sort of aha moment when I said, damn, I've studied under some of the world's foremost experts in subject areas. Well, I know how to create a wall. That's pretty easy. So basically, Isophit is just a fancy wall that you can put in the middle of a room, or now it's portable, so you can take it with you if you want to go somewhere. So that's the beauty of it. It's such a simple concept. I'm going to push into something that doesn't move. Now, the beauty of that, as opposed to how people would normally exercise, normally they lift weights, right? So if I'm like doing a bench press or something like that, and I start to get tired, that weight that I'm trying to lift actually gets heavier, and it puts me at risk because I didn't bother to calculate the weight under a fatigued state. So what you end up having is all these people in the exercise world get injured by lifting weights. You got to worry about the physics of that. Like, how fast are you moving? Did you stop too quickly? Did you start too quickly? All this stuff. So the inertial loads of that, and it gets into that guy Newton's law of motion, law of inertia. And so looking at that sort of stuff, it's like, okay, what are we doing wrong as an industry? I studied under these experts. Nobody's doing isometrics. I create a fancy wall. I see an instantaneous result for lowering blood pressure, or near instantaneous. I mean, 2 weeks to resolve blood pressure after 14 years. Pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
We were using it for neuromuscular re-education. So basically, you have joint pain, muscle pain, poor mobility. We would help you with isometrics to basically resolve all those issues. So now it's like, okay, we got the therapy side, and isometrics historically has lived in therapy, right? Go to a physiotherapist, I'm like, yeah, we start with isometrics for return to play protocols, post-surgical stuff. It's like, cool, that's awesome. But why aren't the fitness world doing it? And why isn't the sports performance world doing it? So I had that sort of aha moment, came up with the design. One of my clients happens to be a senior partner in Canada's largest law firm. Subsequently, he broke his neck doing yoga. You know, he achieved further with stretching because nobody defines an endpoint with stretching. So he's one of the ones that got further. You know, unfortunately, a 3-level spinal fusion at C2 to C3 and C4. So this guy, Ruben, comes in. When I tell him about this wonderful idea, he has some choice words for me because he's a little bit of a prickly dude. And he goes, you know what? I'll introduce you to my patent lawyer. I'm like, okay, cool. Then he follows that up with, well, the first session's free, but then it's $450 an hour.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay, cool. Meet the lawyer. He's like, I'd probably be, 10, 15,000, like that window to go through this process. It's like, okay, cool. I'm confident. The market needs it. I'm sort of a subject area learning to be expert. And then it's like, okay, cool. What do I need to do? Well, He's like, well, step one, we do a patent search. Cool. What's that? He's like, well, we got to contact the U.S. Patent Office. We got to see if your idea or your concept is infringing on anybody else's stuff. So I get a call about 10 days later from Armand, and he goes, you know what? I've never seen this before. Like, what do you mean never see this before? He's like, well, there's a subclassification for isometric based exercise equipment in the US Patent Office, and there's virtually nothing in there. So we have carte blanche. Let's write a big, like whatever we want to write, we can write. We're basically going to have no opposition. So we write this patent. This takes a period of time. In that window from sitting down with Armand to coming up with sort of, let's go through this patent thing. We have some personal issues going on, myself and my girlfriend at this time. She has what's called fibroids, so massive fibrous tumors on her uterus. And at this point, we've been together a couple of years. We're looking at marriage. We're actually engaged at this point in time. And at that point, we're like, we love life. We're going to travel. We're going to do singlehood, basically. We're looking at kids. And then they told us, it's like, hey, if you want to have children, you best do it now because we can't guarantee viability of a child later if we go in and take out these fibroids. And we're talking like 15 centimeters. Like these are not small things. So 6 inches, give or take. It's a little bit more than 6 inches. And so we're like, oh, damn. So we meet with all the specialists, right? And this is the part of the journey of business that, business is one thing, life is one thing. And when they sort of intertwine, anything can happen.
Yeah.
So we get told that we're going to basically, it's going to be like 18 months based on the fibroids, the locations, the number of them. We're probably going to lose a couple kids along the way. I was like, okay, cool, let's try. So patents, business. My wife's also an entrepreneur, has her own business. I have my own business and going down this entrepreneurial journey. So we're looking 18 months, have some hardship along the way. We get pregnant month 1 and a high risk pregnancy. So don't really do anything. So we go down this process. I'm building up my patents. My wife is growing a kid now. And let's jump forward 7 months. 28 weeks later, my wife's water breaks.
Wow.
If you know how long kids are supposed to be, they're about 40. So we're 3 months early to this party. And it's like, my wife's out for a girls' weekend the weekend before. We're still having some good times. We're planning for this. And all of a sudden, it's like we get sideswiped. Water breaks. So we go to the hospital and they're like, yeah, kid's coming. Hold on. This is not what we planned for. Clearly, it's not what we were told. So they have the ability to sort of slow down the pregnancy via some sort of shot. So they shoot my wife up with this thing. The amniotic fluid fills back up and we get an additional 5 days. And during this time, the 5 days is vital because it's about having the lungs develop. And incremental day is like a milestone moment. So we get to the 5 days, then we have to, we go through a cesarean section. We have, baby comes early. She's born at 2 pounds, 12 ounces and about just shy of 7 inches long. So not big, looks kind of like a rhesus monkey. But now we go through the journey of the NICU. My wife's fibroids that swelled with pregnancy collapsed down on her uterus, cut off her basic bladder function. So she has a complicated post-pregnancy in hospital for 9 days. So remember I said she was her own business and had her own business, of now which she loses. This is now 2009. So we're just going through the credit crunch. So I lose all of my credit cards because I missed my payment twice, in the sense that I missed the payment date, not I missed the payment. So they said, yeah, you're high risk. We're going to basically suspend your credit. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, we're canceling your credit cards and you have no more credit. So I lost my credit. My wife lost her job. I got a kid in the NICU. I got a wife in the hospital. And then I get a phone call from my patent lawyer. Hey, we're about ready to file. And it's like, okay, that's great. He's like, I hope you're sitting down though. I'm like, what do you mean? And this is now a couple of weeks further along the story. He's like, hey, we've had some overruns. And it's kind of like, okay, we've had overruns. Well, that's not, okay, cool. It's like, hey, it's going to be about $47,000. I'm like literally dead in the water. I have no money. More importantly, I only had 25. And then we went through some hardship. My wife lost her job. So like, it was like, what is going on here? So, thank you very much. Really excited to file this. Go see my kid upstairs in the NICU. And then it's like the next day, post to Facebook. And it's basically like, I can't believe this. I'm about to file. I'm like totally screwed. So I get a phone call about 10 to 15 minutes later. And there's this woman on the other end of the phone who used to be a client. And this lady goes to me, hey, Brad, I'm upset you didn't phone me, but I just want to let you know everything's going to be okay. I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, I got a check for $100,000 for you. I'm going to drop it off to you on Monday. And I'm just like, boom. Are you kidding me? You're going to give me $100,000. So I'm like, you're an angel. And I know we have like angel investors, but no. This was an angel who showed up on Monday, hands me a check for $100,000. And then she starts walking away. And then she stops. She goes, oh, what do I get for this? So I go, hey, how about 10% of the company? And she goes, awesome. And continues walking. I mean, technically, we didn't even have a company yet. So awesome. It was incredible. So that's kind of how Isophit started. And then that was 2009. 2014, because it took us a little time to recover and stuff like that, we finally, and I had like 3 or 4 patents by 2014, we finally built out our first prototype. So it was end of 2013 going into 2014. So I have this steel sort of medical looking device that is just ugly, but functionally awesome, because what it did, it allowed us to prove that Isophit, which at that time was called Motion Block, really dumb name, but anyways, we changed it. And we end up going to the University of Toronto, and we have one of our clients did a master's thesis on basically isometric exercise and how it relates to volleyball athletes and their knee angle and stuff like that. So we had Isophit on inception, basically involved in a university study, proving that it does isometric exercise. And that's the only study I ever care about, because now every other study that comes out with that word isometric, well, because you're pushing into something that doesn't move, well, I'm going to hang my hat off their literature, because the function's the exact same, the movement scenario and the word is all the same. So I don't have to really pay for scientific literature. And now I was like years too early for this party. So now isometrics is considered superior to dynamic exercise for lowering blood pressure in a hypertensive population. There's 1.7 billion people currently with hypertension. That's 1 in 7 people in the world have hypertension, and my product outperforms the spin bike for lowering it. It also makes you stronger to the level of my product, because it restrains 1,250 pounds on the portable-ish unit. Well, that's going to make you stronger than lifting weights, which is kind of cool. It also has the ability to build bone and create stiffness within the tendon structure. So you actually transmit force from the muscle to the bone better and more efficiently to help with movement strategies. So that's why all of these organizations keep calling me and sort of saying, hey, Brad, we've noticed some injuries. Hey, Brad, we've noticed some performance loss in our athletes. Can Isophit help with this? And the answer, the easy and immediate answer is yes. And the result, usually you start to see within the first week. So it's not like you have to sort of sit there and go, I did this for 5 weeks and I see X. It's like, no, the first week, if you're not feeling a difference, you probably didn't use the product, because it's across the board. It's everyone. Like we see it with stroke patients. We see it with obese people looking to rapidly lose fat. Obviously, you have to use the machine, but you don't have to do cardio. You don't have to modify your diet, and you don't have to do weightlifting. So those are some things. Like we saw one lady, Maria, and huge success story. She lost 3 dress sizes in 22 days, only doing half an hour of isometrics, right, on Isophit. So a 30-minute program. So we do 10 exercises for your lower body, 10 for your core, 10 for your upper body. It's a 45-second contraction. You have a 15-second rest. And then what happens? Magic. I create stability. I create strength throughout my entire structure. Now, from a cool sort of muscle physiology perspective, isometrics at a maximal level burns a similar amount of calories to maximum sprinting on a per muscle basis. And the reason for that is during a sprint, your muscles are only working a proportionate period of time. During an isometric, it's working the entire time. So I'm able to sort of have like the ultimate body hack to optimize caloric usage or expenditure, however you want to phrase that. So it's just remarkable with what we're seeing, across all of these different sectors. Like rehab, as I said, we're now getting into the employee fitness side of things. So this will, for your audience out there who have businesses who may have underperforming like employees from a physical perspective, let's look at it this way. If you have a job that you're sitting there, well, that seated stationary position is an isometric. So what level of go to the gym and run around like this is actually going to prepare you to hold still? The answer is, well, not that one. Isometrics, like if I have to sit here and if I sit up nice and tall and I'm worried about carpal tunnel stuff, and let's say I type on a computer, well, if I don't have the ability to like pronate my wrists, I have to migrate my elbows out here. If I migrate my elbow out here, I have more stress on my shoulder up here. Well, now that's that chronic neck pain thing that guys on computers, women on computers always have. And then they're like, oh, I got carpal tunnel stuff. Well, if I'm slouching here and I don't have good muscle control and stability, the mobility side of movement is going to rip you apart. And the more you do it, the more damaging it is. All right. And the unfortunate part, like take runners as an example. The more you run, the higher the probability that you will get injured by running. If you get injured by running, shockingly, if you continue running, you end up worse from an injury perspective. And that's not everybody. I mean, there's some quality runners out there who actually built for it. And the majority of the population, I think the US running community is about 52 million people right now, of which up to 90% of those are injured annually.
Crazy.
Like it's just absolutely nuts. It's absolutely nuts, man. So, but that's kind of what we're doing. I mean, we're doing such phenomenally great things. It's fun.
Isophit.com, people. That is Brad, that's incredible. I mean, anytime that you can pretty much guarantee results in anything fitness related is incredibly rare. So congratulations to your family and to you for investing when it really didn't look like a thing that was possible.
No, it didn't. There's been many trials and tribulations, my friend.
That's incredible. I'd love to transition, although I can't even count how many hacks you just gave us as on the show. But do you have any other stories that really taught lessons in regards to a time that you paid an idiot tax or some of your best local business hacks?
Man, oh man. Production nightmares, right? Something outside my control. It's really actually quite recent, and we were able to resolve it. So I look at it from a successful perspective, but it was a learning lesson. So and my manufacturers, they're all awesome, and we've had great success with them over the years. But we ran into an issue a couple of weeks ago. And so we get this great order, like potentially life-altering business relationship order. So a Mark Cuban owned company called Rise Nation, they're out of New York City. So I get a call and they're like, hey, they're familiar with Isophit. They have like 1 or 2 units type things. They're like, we want to make Isophit a big part of our program. I'm like, well, that's good because they're normally VersaClimbing and stuff like that. So they would have 50 units of VersaClimbers in their facility. And it's like this theatrical odyssey, for lack of a better word. Like this facility is so beautiful. The light show is at a different level. The energy, the artistry, like everything is top notch. And so Mark's business partner is a guy named Jason Walsh. Jason Walsh works with many of the Hollywood's biggest A-list celebrities. As examples, like they featured Isophit in Shape magazine at the beginning of the year with Zoe Saldana. So the story was, do Zoe Saldana's workout created by Jason Walsh, right? And it's like, so Jason's phenomenal. So that's how we sort of ended up with Rise Nation, because he's the co-owner and basically the entrepreneur behind that. And so we get this order. So they want 40 units, 20 to go to Chicago, 20 to go to New York. And so they're taking away half their VersaClimbers and they're putting in half Isophits. So absolutely life altering from a branding perspective, from an opportunity perspective. And we run into some manufacturing issues. So we manufacture overseas. So we get 10 of the 40 units out. I was like, okay, we got a deadline. I was like, what are we going to do? Like, we're not hitting this deadline because we've had some issues at the plant. What do you call those? Like an employee perspective, as well as some product issues. And so we had to basically sort of round up 10 Isophits, because we could send 10. We need 10 more, and we have like 5 days to do this. And the most beautiful thing about having a great network of people is I was able to reach out to Isophit owners who actually have Isophits that they've purchased and round up units to borrow so I could make the show go on. So I put them in the back of my car. Like I was supposed to be in Barcelona. So I'm in Barcelona working with Team France for the America's Cup. So they're one of our clients as well. So I go over there, I cut my trip short. So I fly back from Barcelona, which I just left on Saturday. So I'm in Toronto, fly Saturday, go to Barcelona there from basically Sunday morning to Wednesday, fly back, pick up all the units. So I got to run around the whole city. And my wife was instrumental in that as well. So now we have like 10 units that we drive down to New York. So I then drive to New York on Friday, and that's about a 10-hour drive. So I literally land, wrap up units, drive down, and it goes off without a hitch. It was absolutely beautiful. Units show up a couple days later. Got to go drive back down to New York, pick up the units, but it's phenomenal. So one of those lessons, look out for your existing clients and go above and beyond when needed. Stuff is going to happen. People respect that. Be honest, be transparent, try to stay ahead of the shit. Sorry to swear, but it literally is that. If you can kind of stay ahead of it, but you can manage it, because especially coming out of COVID, everyone knows that before that, it was like, absolutely not. And now it's like, oh yeah, stuff's going to happen that's outside of people's control. That's one lesson. So have great people around you. And I know that's really, everyone sort of says, yeah, have people, but do it. But you also got to bring your game to the table as well. Because if you're not of quality, they're not going to want to hang out with you. So that's one big major sort of thing that's been recent. And there's been other manufacturing issues. Shipping's always a nightmare. At no point in time does shipping go smoothly, easily, anything. Like I was involved in a little bit of an issue with one of the major suppliers. They were measuring my packages wrong. We sent several hundred, same package, same weight. They were coming back saying, oh, well, it's 3 times the weight. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, it's laser measured. I'm like, well, if it's laser measured, how many other packages are you overcharging people? Because you charged me 3 times the amount and I'm not paying for this. And they're like, well, you have to pay for it. I'm like, well, I'm not. Well, then you need to file a complaint. I'm like, I'm not filing a complaint. I've told you that's my complaint. I'm not going through your stupid process. We're still fighting about it. There's many other people out there that I can ship with. So fix your issues. So just stupid stuff where it's like, business is hard enough, let alone like somebody else, and guilty of it too, somebody else messing up to influence your business. So obviously I did that with Rise Nation there. Now the show did go on, the product did show up, but if you're ever in New York, go check out this place. It's so wild. So there's that. We had an interesting story. I don't know if I can tell this one or not, but I'll tell you the beginning of it. So I get an email and I look at it and I'm like, U.S. Army? You gotta be kidding me. U.S. Army emailed me? That's like BS. So I call a couple buddies. I'm like, do you think this is legit? And they're like, well, it sounds pretty legit. Why don't you call them? I'm like, well, I'm kind of nervous. I don't want to call them. I'm a one-person show. I'm from a town of 5,000 people. I'm a farm kid. And here you got obviously one of the biggest armies in the world emailing me to learn more about Isophit. So pick up the phone, call them, and it shockingly is the US Army. And they're like, yeah, we heard about your product. We're really interested in it. We would like to demo it. And I'm like, demo it? I don't do demos. If you'd like to buy it, we can buy it. Well, we don't want to buy it unless we demo it. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like relatively new to this world of business. I'm like, well, you're the US Army. What is the process of doing this? So we go through the process. And so I drive a unit down to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And this is like a 3-month window here. And they're like, well, we want to trial it for 3 months to see if it works and all this. So if you've ever been to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, this thing is, I think they got like almost 300,000 like people on base at any time. Like it literally is its own community, city really. And I get to the edge of the base where the fence is. And I think it took me like 45 minutes to drive to the parking lot. Like that's how big this thing is. And kind, wonderful. Once I get to the sort of inside, but prior to getting in, there's this whole bomb check on my vehicle. I have to get out. They search my vehicle. And I'm like, and it's a rental. And they're like, well, we need you to open the hood of the van. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. And they're like, what do you mean? And I look like I'm a fumbling idiot. I'm starting to get nervous. I'm starting to get hot. And they're like, excuse me, sir. Like, because now it seems weird. Because who doesn't know how to open the lid of the car? They just kind of started laughing at me. The guy's like, step out of the way. And of course, because he doesn't want to pull it, because he didn't know who I am. Right? So there's security protocols that they're following. And I'm like, I don't know where it is. I'm happy to pull it. And it's so just like little things like that. So stories that eventually, if I write a book, will be in there. And there's a ton of them. And then I had one guy, started working with him. We call him the zombie. So this guy, Keith, out of Katy, Texas. So he died. So had a heart attack, died, was in a coma, came out of the coma. And I heard about him, and he was at a gym in Katy, Texas that had Isophit. So we were connected on social. So I go to Keith, I'd love to see if I can help you out. And he's like, what? Let me send you an Isophit. He's like, what? I want to see if I can help you. So he died. He has what's called an LVAD, so a left ventricular assist device. So this external pump that circulates blood. So his heart is 100% dead. Doesn't have a heart. He died, right? And that's why we call him the zombie. Because like, dude died, came back to life, has no functioning heart. He's the sweetest, most kindest, gentlest man, but still criteria zombie, void of lack of soul. And so we were able to sort of help him qualify for a heart transplant or to get on the heart transplant list, which is just phenomenal. So he went from not being able to really walk to walking about 5-6 miles, just to increase getting his strength back by using Isophit. And so we got tons of stories like that. That's why I wake up every day. It's like, who can we help today? It's kind of how I sort of wake up. I might not go to bed that way, but it's always tomorrow I can help somebody new, which is pretty phenomenal.
That's beautiful. Thank you for those shares, Brad. Would love to hear from you as CEO of the company. What are your favorite books that you recommend to anybody in your space?
Man, books. To be honest, I don't read many books. I just read scientific journals and studies. I probably read about 9 studies this morning. Yeah, I basically just consume knowledge on the subject area. So read a ton of stuff on that. Probably the most influential book that I ever read. And this is really, really, really cheesy. The Celestine's Prophecy. That really cheesy book that you would read. It's like a 10-minute read type thing. And I read that before I went to Australia when I was 24 years of age. And they talk about insights in their book. It gave me the insight on how to look at life differently. Now combine that with 15 concussions and head trauma and all that, and I look at life differently. I have an abundance of opinion and self-worth, and I think and believe I can make a difference. So from a business perspective, just become a subject area expert and be pretty awesome as a human. Like if I know how to help you and I keep my mouth shut, I can't help you. So Put yourself out there. So it's like tiny little things like that. Podcasts, though, I do listen to those. Guy Ross has an awesome podcast. Obviously, you guys have an awesome podcast. But Guys is How We Built This. So I love listening to the stories of entrepreneurs and stuff like that. So we have that. But yeah. So
Brad, you touched on being surrounded around the right people. What are some of your ultimate go-tos or things that you look for, or things that you try to avoid when bringing somebody new into your life or into your organization?
Are they willing to do what's unnecessary? And I phrase it that way because people, they show up and they go, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, what's unnecessary. Go above and beyond. Make the experience different.
Yeah.
Like do things that people don't expect. I'm on social media a fair bit, so I notice who likes my stuff, right? I look. It's like just scour through. So I notice on one post that a guy named Derek Millender liked it. And I looked at it and like, Derek Millender happens to be the strength and conditioning coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I sent Derek a message. Hey, noticed you like something. Is there something I can help you out with? He responded, yeah, I'm kind of interested in what you're doing. It's like, cool. What's your telephone number? That was on a Saturday. Sunday, we get on the phone. Monday, I'm in a car driving to Cleveland. He's like, I'm like, well, what are you doing tomorrow? He's like, nothing. I'm like, cool, I'll get in the car, I'll drive down. He's like, you'll do what? I'm like, yeah, it's a 5-hour, 6-hour drive. I don't mind. He's like, what? You're going to drive me down? Are you going to drive down to see me? I'm like, yeah, I'll be down about 2:00. Does that work? He's like, yeah. So hang out with him for a couple hours. I stay the night in Cleveland, meet him again in the next morning on the Tuesday. I was driving back. I had no plan on staying in Cleveland and seeing him on Tuesday. It's like, I'll show you this product. So I get down there. We get along like, he's an incredible human being. We get along. We're just talking shop. We're talking athletes. We're talking performance. We're talking like how isometrics influences all of this stuff, right? And he's world champion. He's like worked with LeBron James. He's worked with like all of the big name people that went through Cleveland since about 2013. So ton of stories and just an awesome human being. So next morning, we hang out for a couple hours again, just showing him like all the different things we can do on this one product. Hours showing one product, different things. Like it's the most versatile product in the planet. Like it's ridiculous. And so at the end, he's like, oh, he's got to go take care of some business and stuff like that. He's like, you haven't even tried to sell me. I'm like, I'm not a sales guy. I don't like sales. This will help you. Do you need it? It's this price. If you don't need it, I'm not going to convince you. I don't want to convince you. If you don't want my product, I don't want you to have it. There's nothing worse for me as a parent of a product, knowing that the consumer doesn't love it. Like that just hurts my soul because it's like, and I had one of my clients the other day sort of say, Brad, Isophit, there's nothing special about it. And the guy's name's Craig, and it's transformed Craig's life. And that's the cool thing. So to listen to Craig say it, and he's has a business just outside of Montreal, and he basically only uses Isophit with all of his clients. He's like, it's not special. It's like, ouch. He's like, what's special is what's behind Isophit. It's the education. It's the knowledge. It's how do you use a bar and transform somebody's blood pressure, bone health, all of these things. So back to Derek, back to the guy with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So Derek picks up some units for the Cavs. We get along. And then Derek's going out to the LA. And Derek goes, hey, can you arrange to have an Isophit out in LA for me? Because I want to show it to this guy, Jason, who I know. Jason's the guy who's got the in with all of Hollywood, right? This guy, Jason Walsh. So Derek shows Jason. Jason calls me later that day. We got units going out to Jason within the week. And so that's how we ended up in Hollywood. How we end up in the FBI. So as I'm going to see Derek, I noticed this thing called the Spire Institute in Geneva, Ohio. And I see U.S. Olympic Training Facility. Well, that's kind of interesting. Cool. Go by. I drive by it like 3 or 4 times. And then I'm like, I'm going down to Cleveland one more, like later in the summer type thing. This is going back 2 years. And Stipe Miocic, who happens to be the UFC heavyweight champion, right? His trainer, so Stipe is from Cleveland. His trainer is also from Cleveland. So I reach out to his trainer, a guy named Bobby. So I reach out to Bobby and say, hey, Bobby, I'm going to be in Cleveland for this window of time. I would love to be able to meet you, show you the product. And so I get a message after I'd gone to Cleveland. I get back home. Bobby calls me. He's like, hey, this Friday works. I'm like, perfect. I will see you this Friday. Not, hey, I was just there and you missed your window. So I drove back to Cleveland to go see Bobby, show up at Bobby's place, show him the Isophit. And so I'm showing a couple things. And the Spire Institute is 800,000 square feet. It is probably the second largest training facility in the world. And so Bobby's there, trainer to the UFC champion, all this cool stuff. He's now the head of sports science and programming for this institute. And so we're there. Bobby's like, I got a couple minutes. I got to do a couple things. Can you just show my team? So I'm showing the team, and he walks over and goes, hey, Brad, I hope you don't mind. Can I keep this machine? I'm like, okay. He's like, no, I'm not for me. Well, I also work with the FBI. And I'm going to be seeing them on Tuesday, and this is Friday. And can I take this and present this to the FBI? Because I think that they need this. He hasn't even been on this machine yet. He's only watched what we did and the versatility of the unit with his staff. So he comes over, he's like, I love this. Like, this is amazing. So, and that's how we ended up in the FBI. So I end up in Hollywood because I have the world champion strength and conditioning coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers be my pitch man. I end up in the FBI because I have the UFC heavyweight champions trainer as a pitch man. So that's how Isophit's growing. It's growing by virtue of we have a great product. We have a great product that influences everyone who uses it. And it's kind of like, okay, this is great. We just need a bigger voice, a bigger audience. We get people like you who sort of say, hey, what are you doing? It seems pretty damn interesting. Let's help this grow. Let's help people. And, you know, my guiding light for everything I do in life is create health, change lives, and give back. So if I'm able to do that, who doesn't want to be a part of that?
For sure.
And that's what we've done. We've been able to have a groundswell of people just sort of saying, hey, Isophit worked for me. You try it. Boom. Another client, bigger client, more clients. Yeah, as I said, we're 33 countries right now. And Isophit, outside of manufacturing, which are outsourced, Isophit's just me. I don't have employees, right? And it's crazy. I need employees, and we're going to be doing a funding round shortly to be able to sort of hire those people. But as of now, it's just Brad gets on a plane, Brad gets in his car, Brad goes anywhere to create opportunity. And that's why I say it's taken me a long time to get to the starting line, but now I'm ready. We proved proof of concept. We got the biggest names in Hollywood using it. We got the bigger names in Hollywood with units at their house. So it's like all of these things, it's like, it works.
That's
it
awesome.
helps people. And, you know, so that's where we're at. And it's an extraordinary ride.
Wrapping up, I'd love to hear from you. If you could have dinner with a historical figure from the past, who would it be and what are you talking about?
A guy named Dr. Ronald Wiley. He was a U.S. Air Force research scientist who basically discovered the isometric phenomenon, which leads to rapid reductions of blood pressure. So him, I would love to be able to pick his mind. He passed a couple of years ago, but he's the founding father of isometrics for lowering blood pressure. Awesome. So we have him. And then there's this guy named Oscar Konstam, who is a German research scientist who passed away in 1917. So he stumbled onto a thing called also the isometric phenomenon, but it was about, like, people have probably done this while being drunk. It's called the floating arm trick, right? So it's where you push your arm into a wall, and then all of a sudden it's like 45 seconds, and then your arm will float up. So it's a way of augmenting your involuntary muscular system. Now, he didn't figure out why and what it was, But I think that would be a pretty awesome conversation, just because I am so passionate about the history of isometrics, the inception of it, why, because I just want to know why it's better. And then that's why I read all of these studies every day I can to cram more information into this melon of mine so I can be able to help stuff.
Brad, I want to congratulate you on what Isophit has become, and being an owner operator and CEO of a business that is definitely shaping where fitness is going has its feats, but congratulations. And we're beyond excited to continue to support you and watch your organization grow. Isophit.com, PHIT. And Brad, what's the best way for people to stay connected with you?
Fire me off a message on LinkedIn. I post a lot on LinkedIn, so it's just Brad Thorpe. Obviously, look to see if it looks like my face in the picture and has Isophit. Also Instagram. So Isophit_inventor, or the corporate one is just at Isophit. So those are the best places. We tend to put out some interesting and slightly controversial information to force people to think about this thing called exercise a little bit, because too many people are being injured by it and not enough people are participating in it. Change that.
That's awesome. Brad, thank you so much, and we'll stay tuned.
Peace. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much. That's it for this week's episode. I hope you found it helpful. Be sure to head over to our site, local-business-hacks.com, to check out the show notes and send me questions or ideas for future episodes. If you want to grow your business just like the people you've heard from here, follow Local Business Hacks Podcast and tune in for new tips, tricks, and tactics. Until next time, thanks for listening and keep hacking.